Good morning from Sea Otter. I'm Chris with Enduro Bearings, and we're going to do a little bit of bearing install and removal. And I've got my friend Kalen here from Pivot Bikes. He's going to help us out with doing bearing removal and installation on a suspension rocker. And it's going to be utilizing all of our Enduro Bearings press and removal tools. We have a few new ones to go along with our original BRT-060 bearing press, which has hub press, suspension press, selection of guides and removal cups for suspension. Kalen's going to be using those on the pivot rocker. I'm going to be showing you a few different ways of installing and removing bearings from hub sets. Maybe we'll get to doing some bottom brackets with our BRT-40 tool and our BRT-41 tool, but I'm going to pass it over to Kalen, and he will show you the finer points of bearing removal and replacement on suspension pivots.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. We've got a link here from one of our bikes. This is a upper rocker link off one of our bikes. All pivot bikes come with Enduro bearings, and these tools are amazing for removing and installing bearings, but because we use Enduro bearings, you actually don't end up needing to replace them very often. So the first thing we recommend is just checking your bearings. Just go through, make sure that everything feels good. There's no play between the races. But if you do need to replace some bearings, the best thing to do this is the best tool. So Enduro has these amazing tools. The BRT-060 has different length press rods. So depending on what application you're working on, you can use the shorter one, the longer one. For frame bearings pressed into frames, you may need to use the blind hole puller for some frames. For pretty much everything that Pivot has, this is the best tool for the job. So you can use less expensive tools, but you risk damaging your link, your frame, your bearing. There's a lot of things that can go wrong if you use the wrong tools. So we're going to go through this. We took this link off a bike because pretty much everybody knows how to pull bolts out of a bike, so that's a fairly easy thing. So we're just going to jump right into removing bearings. One good thing to start with, if you do have a complex linkage on your bike, is to take a picture of the bike before you take the link off so you know which way it goes back on.
That's a good idea.
Or refer to your bike's small part schematic when you're going through this. So Chris has all this set up for me here. Depending on what bike you're working on, they've got all these fittings that come with the kit, and then depending on what application, these have removable handles, which are fantastic. So if you need a lot of leverage, you can use the longer handles. If you want to use an Allen wrench to turn it, you can, or you can use an adjustable wrench or a box wrench to turn the nut on this guy. So finding the right fittings is very important. You want to make sure that everything's supported properly. You're not pressing against any surface kind of at an angle or off center, because you can damage things that way. So we use the extended race bearings, which also add to the longevity of the bearing life because we don't have a bunch of spacers or anything in our frames, just the really nice Enduro bearing, a bolt holding it to the frame. So no intermediaries, no other issues that we could possibly see. So that's a great feature of these extended race bearings.
These are the Max Black Oxide bearings that have a full complement of balls, plus the black oxide coating, which helps fight corrosion. Plus, it gives the material actually an extra level of annealing or normalization, so that it's actually even a little bit harder than the standard bright finish Max bearings. So they tend to last a good bit longer.
On our links, the way Pivot does it, we actually hold a very tight tolerance on our bearing pockets. So we use a CN fit bearing that Enduro offers. Because we hold our tolerances tight, we use a tighter fit bearing. So another reason why these bearings last a long time. One thing to note when you remove the bearings, you might notice as we do this, we've already removed these bearings once before. So the retaining compound has been removed. At Pivot, we install all bearings with a green Loctite retaining compound, just to make sure everything stays perfectly where it is. But you'll notice we use two different bearing fit pockets. We use a press fit and a slip fit. So we'll get a little more into that later after we remove these bearings. So get this set up here. What we're going to want to do is make sure we have this bearing supported properly with the right pieces. So we got a 15 millimeter inner diameter on that bearing. So we're going to want to use that, insert it into the bearing to support it nicely so that race is fully supported as we go to press that out. And then on the outside, you want to make sure that you've got something to press your bearing into so that it can come out. And so they've got these nice removal pieces that have this opening here. If you have a shoulder on a link, something that's going to interfere with that, not all links have a fully round flat surface to go with. And then it also helps you make sure as you're lining everything up that you've got the bearing going in or out straight. So it's a great visual spot.
Staying straight is absolutely key, or else you can do damage to the link or the bearing or even the tool itself.
And in certain situations, you can use this to press all the way across. This works great for certain situations, and especially like hubs and different things like that, this medium length press rod. But for this, we're going to just do one side at a time just to make sure everything gets lined up just right. So, go ahead.
Tell me about the way you are supporting your customers with the bearing replacement program that you've just put in place.
Yeah, can't believe I forgot to mention that. Thanks, Chris. So Pivot's recently started a lifetime bearing replacement. So with any Pivot bike, once you register your bike, you get lifetime bearing replacements. So you'll be getting these black oxide bearings, and we don't see bearings need to be replaced very often. Our bikes tend to last a long time because of the way we assemble our bikes, because we use Enduro bearings, because we have tight tolerances. But when you do need to replace some bearings, we got you taken care of, and we'll give you a full set. Just go to our website and register the bike.
Good deal.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and press this bearing out. So we're going to get our cup that we're going to push the bearing in. Always make sure you take a look at which way the bearing's pressed into the link, so you're not fighting yourself. So we're going to get this set up here.
So a tip on that is if you look at the link, you can see the outside race is open there. That's the way you want to go. You can see on the inside, you can't see that outside race. So if you press that way, it's not going to go anywhere. But if you press that way, it'll come out.
So we got the bearing going out that way. Our cup there to catch that. Get our guide there to support that race so everything's nice and straight. And then our nut here. And so it's always good as you start this, if you feel a lot of resistance, something's probably not right. So double check, take a look in there. Make sure everything's coming on straight. Make sure you've got enough clearance here for that bearing to come out. And sometimes at the start, especially on pivots, because we use that retaining compound, it may take a little bit to break that loose to get that bearing to come out. But once that retaining compound's loose, then you're good to go to get that bearing to come out. So you can spin your wrench, spin the handles, whatever works best. And it should be a nice smooth sailing as it starts to come out, and then it's completely out of the frame. Yeah, if you ever encounter any resistance when removing or installing a bearing, always double check everything. You might have to take the press apart to take a look. If you see your bearing going in crooked, definitely reset. A telltale sign if something's going in crooked is you'll see silver right here on this link if a bearing's going in crooked. and you could create a little shoulder there that catches the bearing, and then forever you'll have a hard time getting it in straight. So it's always good to take the time and be very careful. Make sure, as Chris said, everything's straight. And you can see in here that dried retaining compound. So that's what we use. Some companies use grease. We use that retaining compound just to make sure that that bearing is locked in place exactly where it needs to be in perfect alignment, so that you don't get any walking of that. So when we go to install the bearings, you're going to want to clean this up with a pick and some isopropyl alcohol. Make sure everything's very clean, so there's nothing that's going to impede that bearing going back into the link.
I noticed that when I was working with this link a little bit earlier yesterday, that compound it's pretty significant. It holds the bearing in place really well, and it's almost to the point where is this starting to bind up, because it really holds it super well. Yep. So it's definitely imperative to take a look at the whole setup, make sure it's straight, and with breaking out that green Loctite, it takes a little bit more effort than I'm usually used to, but as long as it's all straight, it'll do it.
So that was the drive side bearing of this bike. Now we're going to switch to the non-drive side. And so this is what I was talking about earlier, that slip fit versus press fit. So this bearing we've actually already removed, and we've broken that retaining compound bond. So this is going to come out very easy because that retaining compound has been compromised, basically. So same setup as before. Get your guide in there, make sure everything's lined up straight. But this one we probably won't even need to use the wrench, since we already broke it loose. If it was the first time we were removing it, same process, we'd need the wrench here to get that retaining compound to come loose, but you can see I'm barely even turning the handle to get that to come out. So the reason we do this is two parts for our assembly process. So we'll go into that after we get this bearing out of here. On our bikes, the way we have our bearings set up, we've got press fit locations and slip fit locations. And our assembly process, we have a two-part process. So there's the pre-assembly, which is our bearing installation and all the press fit locations on our links. So our upper link, our lower link, all the drive side frame contacting or shock contacting bearings are going to be press fit, or any bearing, these upper ones that don't have an extended race, that aren't contacting the frame, are fully press fit. So these two are press fit, and then these two drive side ones are press fit. So then these non-drive side frame and shock contacting locations would be the slip fit. On the lower link, the two drive side are press fit, and then the two non-drive side are slip fit. And so with those slip fit locations, you'll notice that because we have that retaining compound broken, we can actually press that bearing in relatively easy. It's still a tight fit.
It's probably a little bit of the old retaining compound in there that needs to come out.
Yep. But the installation of this bearing will be done on the frame. So once we have the bearings pressed into the frame on this side, all the critical alignment of the frame's maintained, and then we're taking care of any inconsistencies that could be in the link, the frame, the bolt, the bearing, anything like that, and making sure that as we install that slip fit bearing, it's going to mate up perfectly against that frame and have just the right preload on everything, so the bearings aren't cocked in like that, putting undue stress on them. They're not overpressed, underpressed, crooked, anything like that. Just make sure that everything's running perfectly smooth.
It's a theme. Everything straight and smooth.
Yeah. Whether you're removing bearings, installing bearings, your bike performance, it all matters.
They all want to be linear.
Yeah. We're going to cut to the chase and just show you two installs here instead of all of them. Same process for any bearing installation. Depending on if your bearing has an extended race or not. On this extended race, we're going to need that same cup that we used for removal to make sure that we can press the bearing in fully to get that race fully seated. So we'll start with the drive side of this link. And on this, just like with removal, making sure you have everything supported properly, we're going to use this guide here that matches the bearing. So Enduro has these amazing tools in this guide that matches up perfectly to their bearing. So you're pressing it in, the whole bearing's supported, you're getting everything lined up just right and not damaging the bearing itself during installation or the link or your tool. For this extended race, we're going to do it in two parts. We're going to use a large support. So as we start the bearing into it, we've got a full surface support for that bearing. We could use this and just go straight all the way into this cup, but just to make sure that we've got everything lined up, we don't want to damage anything, the tool, the link, the bearing, we're going to use a support like this to cover that whole surface. Any words of wisdom to add before I do this?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a standard inner race guide for a 6804 bearing. It just happens to be the right size there. And the nice thing about these guides is they all have the same ID here, which is a perfect match for the size of the shaft. So it keeps everything straight and true and kink-free, which is ideal, right? So they're all designed to work together in that way. You can see all the inner races or the inner IDs are all the same on all of these guides, so it keeps everything lined up.
So we're going to use this guide to get it started, just to make sure we've got everything lined up perfect as we get this bearing going. If we were doing this for real, we would have prepped this bearing pocket with that retaining compound before installing the bearing. We apply a thin layer of that green Loctite retaining compound, 638 is what we use, to that pocket, just to make sure that that bearing goes in smooth and then is locked in place for the life of the bearing. So as we get things started, we'll just do a quick shot of what not to do. So as you get everything lined up, if you see that bearing's not straight, you're not going to want to start. So double check. You can see there's a gap here. So that's not good. This is what you don't want to do, and that's why using the right tool is important. So this really almost makes it, I had to force this tool to do that, to get things lined up crooked. But it should just go perfectly even. We'll just give it a really light start to it, just to make sure it's going in. You shouldn't feel any resistance if you're torquing on this. If you have the long handles and you're fighting it, that's not going to be good. So we're going to just get this started in here, just to make sure it's lined up straight, going in nice and even, nice and smoothly. And then we'll just stop and back this off so that we can put the cup on there to get the extended race all the way pressed in. Again, that window so you can see that your bearing's going in straight, and then that notch also helps. In this situation, that won't come all the way around. It would, that little shoulder of the support across here would hit if this was fully round all the way around. So it's great if you have an offset link of some kind. This helps allow to make sure that you're getting everything lined up straight. Again, straight is key. And again, we'll just press that in until you get a stop. You don't need to force it. You should just feel a nice firm stop, and that's where the race is fully seated into the link. Then we'll remove this and double check our work. So you want to make sure that your bearing's nice and flush all the way around. You don't see a gap on the inside here. If we were doing a full installation, you'd see a little bit of excess retaining compound that would have squirted out when we press that bearing in all the way. So you can just take a shop towel and just clean that excess up there.
Yeah, it's pretty key to make sure none of that compound gets to the inner race. So, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect on the outside, but if it gets to the inner race, that's when it can actually start freezing bearings up.
At this point, if we were going through actually doing this, this link's ready to be installed on the bike. We've got all the press fit bearings pushed into the link here, and then we're going to do the frame assembly where we would add the bearings on the frame. So we would mount this link to the bike, this would go to the frame, we'd mount everything up, and then once this is secured to the frame and torqued down, we'd insert our bolt into this bearing, line it up on the frame, and then as we tighten the bolt down, that would go in and line everything up perfectly. So again, we're maintaining that perfect alignment, keeping everything straight. Nothing's getting twisted, overpressed, underpressed. It's just lining up exactly where it needs to. So that's how we do it at Pivot. The great thing about this tool too is if you're going to spend the money on a great tool that's going to last you a lifetime, not only can you work on your suspension pivot links, but you can do hub services, as Chris is about to show you here.
All sorts of stuff.
Use it for these other bottom bracket tools and things like that. So you're really getting your money's worth out of this tool. And yeah, again, we're showing you something that you don't actually need to do very often because enduro bearings do last a long, long time. I've seen people come to me here at Sea Otter that have owned their bike for 8-10 years, and they say, hey, I just want you to check my bearings. I haven't ever replaced them. And we'll pull the shock out, move it through the linkage, even take the links off and spin them. And as these guys say, as long as you don't feel any play in the races, you can even
pretty good,
and you can even service them. The bearings are fully serviceable, so even if they're old, they're still good because they're made the proper way. So
well, cool. Thanks, Kalen. That's
thank you,
really super informative.
Thanks for making the right tools to make our job easier.
You're welcome. We try. Well, that's super cool, Kalen. Thanks so much for coming over and showing us that technical aspect of doing the job, and we're super stoked to have you as partners.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. It was a great time.
Good deal, man.
Cool. Thanks.